Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we publish world-changing wellness books. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This interview is part of a powerful series used to help celebrate Brave Kids Books, which is a new imprint from Brave Healer Productions. And the mission is to share brave words with kids all over the world so they can learn about all of the magic life has to offer. And here today to talk about her books, Timeless Tales, Stories from the Knower Curriculum, and the Knower Curriculum, Teach Meditation to Children with Timeless Tales, is Dr. Shelley Astrof. Welcome, Shelley.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
So you guys, Shelley Astrof is a doctor of meditation and peace pioneer with extensive experience in education. She holds a certificate of advanced studies in yogic science, Vedant philosophy, did I say that right?
Perfectly.
And the theory and practice of meditation, with 4 decades in association with a meditation master in the Himalayas of India. She offers a unique perspective on meditation. As an expert meditation teacher, she'll help you see beyond your visible world. And you guys, I've worked with Shelley now, I don't know, it's at least a year, right? More than a year. We met online.
Years.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. And she's been a co-author in The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing. She's been in my world for a while now, and she is incredible. And I can't wait to share about this children's series with you guys. So Shelley, tell me a little bit about the story of how the idea for this children's book came about.
I have been collecting stories. I feel like from when I was just a child, that was my favorite thing. I used to watch Walt Disney, and I used to love it. I used to love all the fairy tales, and I think my favorite movie was about the Brothers Grimm, and I loved how they went around and they collected stories wherever they heard them. And I came to India and I started doing that myself. I started collecting very unique stories. And sometimes there's stories that maybe we would have heard. I'm from Montreal, that I would have heard there, but the twist and the kind of depth that they put to it was something that was very unique. And I didn't know if it was unique to India, unique to the Himalayas, unique to a kind of meditation yoga lifestyle. And so I started collecting stories, and that was kind of my favorite thing. And at one point, because I had a background in education and I am a curriculum specialist, it was suggested that I take some of the stories and I turn it into something for teachers or parents to use. So that is how these books were born.
So one of my favorite tales in Timeless Tales is donkey riding. Here you go, you guys can have a peek, okay? So it talks about external criticism from the world and how it's best not to listen to that when you're on a path towards your goals. I so resonated with this. Can you talk a little bit about how this story played out in your own life and journey?
I can tell you exactly when this story was told to me. I was walking around the gardens of our institute and I bumped into our guru, and he was just walking around and he said there was somebody in Toronto who was putting on this big conference with thousands of people, and he was so concerned and he was always getting criticized, and he said, come sit down and get a pencil and paper, and I want you to write this story and send it to Doug, this fellow who had this job. And this was the story that he told me. And Doug was living with his wife and his son, and he talked about how they were traveling on the road to go to their goal, to their village, and every village, the father and the son were traveling with their donkey, and every village they went to, he felt they were criticized. First they both walked, and then they said, aren't these silly? Why don't they, the poor child, he should be riding. And then the next village he came to, and they saw the child on the donkey, he heard the villagers say, look at that child, he's so selfish, the father is tired, he must be tired. So then he switched. Then they both went on the donkey, and everywhere he felt that sense of criticism, and inside of himself he wanted that approval, and he wasn't getting it. So what happened was he just sat down, and it never occurred to him that the criticism from the outside was wrong. It only occurred to him that there's something wrong with my donkey. There's something wrong with me. So he goes to throw the donkey away, as if throw him in the ocean or the water. And then he leaves thinking that he has now thrown away his problem, because he didn't see anything about himself. So this wise man goes and finds the donkey and rescues it, and they end up meeting. The father and the son meet the wise man with the donkey, and then he says, you really, really have to get rid of that donkey. He's seriously bad luck. And the wise man looked at him and he said, there's nothing wrong with the donkey. He said, you just listened to people who didn't have who were silly and didn't understand anything. And what you did was, by believing them and their criticism, you took your wit and your wisdom and you threw that away. So by throwing the donkey away, it was as if your wit and wisdom you threw. And you have to believe in yourself.
Yes, the ultimate message, right? So
Yes.
Do you remember a moment on your journey, and maybe even in your business journey, where this was playing out in your life?
Oh, so many times.
Right? I know, me too.
Yeah. I mean, yes, so many times when my mind is being crowded with all the things. But I remember when actually when I wanted to come to India, because I knew that I had as if a calling inside, and I felt that I know that my colleagues from McGill, and they all thought it was fabulous, but my whole family, they actually thought, I had sort of flipped a wig. And it was so powerful that I knew that I had to do this. And it was the first time I didn't take the advice of my parents. And in the end, I have to say that my parents applauded what I did, because they were pretty blown at the success that happened in my life as following what I knew inside to be right for me. And I would say that was sort of the umbrella of what happened in my life. And once you start knowing what it is that's going to work for your life, the first step you take is probably the most difficult, but then you get that assurance inside, and you sort of wade it in, and it's like, what that feels like. And then even though people on the outside might say, well, maybe you shouldn't have done it like that, it's like, I know. So, but the balancing trick is to know when to take the advice and when to listen to yourself. And that's something I've been practicing for myself, where I learned one valuable phrase, and that is, thank you, I hear you, and I'll get back to you.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, so you're a meditation teacher, and meditation is one of the most powerful ways to connect with that higher self and the intuition. And this is the question I want to ask you about that. So one of the things I wished I had earlier in life, much earlier, is a stronger connection to that intuition, to that knowing.
Yeah.
And so I want to know, how was that for you growing up? I know that for me, I lost it somewhere and I had to get that connection back as an adult.
Yes.
So how did that play out in your life?
I would say that as a young child, I grew up with my grandmother, and she instilled all of that in me. And her whole thing was God, and she just kept telling me I had to pray to God. And um, I remember she gave me a prayer, and I didn't hear her correctly, but I didn't know until my 20s that I hadn't heard her correctly. She had told me this Hebrew prayer called Kriya Shema, and I heard the word Krishna. And Krishna is from the Bhagavad Gita. He is the deity that imparts the knowledge of immortality. And that's who I prayed to from when I was like 3 or 4. And I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. And I really laughed when I did hear that. And it was as if nothing wrong is ever happening. We're actually never mishearing anything, because prayer is strong. But I have to say, when I moved back with my family, when I was 11 until 20, I was completely out of sorts. I never felt I belonged. I didn't have that kind of intuition. And I had, you know, anyone who was a girl, a teenager growing up, they know what I'm talking about. Or if they're a parent, I had a son, which is different, but my friends who had girls, I mean, I was all of that. And then at some point, in my mid-20s was when I discovered meditation. But I have to say, when I started teaching, when I went to teachers college, I found a calling in that. I really found something that spoke to me. So for me, it was both that teaching and then meditation. But
Yeah.
it's powerful.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Without a doubt. Oh, so watching my own 2 kids grow up, I always worried about doing everything right, saying the right thing, doing the right thing, acting in the right ways. And I actually think that great parents have a certain amount of this kind of awareness, no matter how they were brought up.
Yes.
So how do you think we can be better parents?
There isn't a rule book, because every child is different and every parent is different, and I only have one. So but what I've noticed is, and especially when I was teaching, and I taught many of the children in India, is that seeing each one for who they are and being honest about it, because loving them is completely honest. Some children, they learn by cuddling up and listening to you read. And some children, they do better with, you put them in a sandbox and there's nothing better. And there's no rule. But if you tune into them and that love is there, they will be the best, because they trust you and you love them, and they will love you because you're loving their being, you know. And it's not like you don't have to say that's not good for you, and no, you know, you don't put the keys inside the sockets, you know. My son loved putting things in sockets. I mean, you know, you have to know when to say no, but you do it because you love them. And I think that you can never go wrong with that. And that love will tune in, and they'll tune into you because they'll want to do it. That's where you come from, is where they want to please you because you want to please them. And it becomes, instead of you becoming someone and then another, you actually become like that one sense with them.
So I had one of the biggest aha moments on my healing journey when I realized my parents were just always doing the best they could with what they had at the time and the upbringing they had, right? But that was a realization that didn't come until much later. It took a while to get to the love and forgiveness stage. But
Yeah.
when you know better, you do better. So I try to move into my own parenting, and actually all of my relationships, right? It's not just with your kids, with as much of that knowing as I can. Does that resonate with you? How did that work in your life?
Well, absolutely. But I have to tell you, one thing that I learned is that I should be real about it, but I had to learn, because of my own personality, that I had to put a little sugar on my tongue, because sometimes I was a little too direct. And I but it's my own personality, you know, where I needed to back off. But I do think that it's I went through a lot with my whole family turning against as if what I was doing. And I had to see that I had to live first before that. And then it just seemed um, to work out. And the very worst that happened, I was happy.
Good point.
And your children will, you know, I know, like, we go through it. I can appreciate what you went through with your family, and I get it. I get it. And whatever the relationship is, somewhere you also manage to have your mother even come to your classes. Now, that's amazing. I mean,
I thought so too. Yeah. Um, she is an amazing
uh-oh.
woman. I can still hear you, but your video froze a little bit.
I'm sorry, I'm frozen.
That's okay. We can still hear your voice. Um, so yes, thank you. I appreciate you mentioning my mom. Hi, Mom. You're amazing. I love you, Mom. um, what do you
I'm
think?
sorry, I was frozen for a bit. I didn't.
Yep, you're good. I could still hear your voice while you were
Oh,
frozen.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I want to know now, this is kind of a big question, but what do you think the most important message we can share with kids is right now?
Um, I think we have to hear them, and we have to know that that they have to trust that we have to know what they need, and they have to know that sometimes we can know better, that we can know what they're going through, and we can help them through their situation. I was just remembering, I remember teaching it. This will illustrate the point. I was teaching in this it was sort of one of these posh schools in Montreal. And one of the teachers wanted the children in my class and hers to do running in the morning. And I didn't want that to happen. and she wanted us to both go and let them sort of run off all their steam. And I wanted them, my class, to do diary. I wanted them to sit, get all their gossipy things out, do whatever they wanted for 20 minutes, and then we were on. And she was really pushing it. And I was very lucky to have some excellent co-workers. So I was speaking to the grade 1 teacher, and I said, what do I do? And she said, sometimes your class is not a democracy. Sometimes you're the teacher. And so I remember I sat the kids down and I said, the other class is doing this, and this is now not a discussion. We are going to continue to do our diary, and this is how it is, and you are not going to do the running in the morning. And I remember they all just sort of looked, and because it was I rarely did that. Everything was expression. And I remember Monday morning came, and my kids were sitting around in their little groups, and the other class came through my class, the other grade 2 class, and they said, aren't you coming? Aren't you coming? And this really blew my mind. These little groups sat there, and I will never forget these girls. They sat there, they were huddling with each other, and they said, we're not coming because we're not allowed. And I realized they didn't want to do it. And that program didn't even last the week because they got so hyper. So sometimes you know better, and you have to trust yourself, but you're knowing better for yourself and for them. And sometimes you just have to say, I know better.
I love it. And hold your ground. We don't always do that. Actually, getting back to the donkey story, we don't always do that because we're worried about what everyone else will think.
Yes.
If we hold our ground in our knowing, which is really important.
But there's also the time when I would say, oh, okay, like I was wrong. Let's try it like this. Like, that flexibility has to be there without the ego thinking that I'm right or I'm wrong. It's like the situation is right and the situation is wrong. And that actually frees everybody's ego. That's how we all got along better.
I love that. Shelley, share a little bit about your programs going on right now. So aside from this beautiful book that you guys can get on Amazon, what else are you up to these days?
Oh, thank you. Well, I do online meditation, and I'm just finishing a 3-month class on a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where the people in the class are incredible, and what we're learning is to differentiate between that which always changes. It's your mind and your senses, and your whole waking state changes. But there is something inside you that's also you that doesn't change. And it's differentiating between the two. And that one who observes and watches and knows, that part is never born and it never dies. So that part is immortal. But the mind can't go there because it's the outcome of it. So through meditation, what happens is your mind, as if it channels, you could say, the mind is always getting its input from the senses. And when you close your eyes, you're allowing the senses to be quiet. The mind settles down. And if you're watching the breath or repeating a mantra, what happens is you're accessing that state of consciousness that is immortal, that is eternal. And the mind, which is an instrument that only is influenced, it starts being influenced by that, and it absorbs that space. And that's what enlightenment is. It's that it enlightens the mind with its own light. And so you don't have to meditate for long periods, like 5-10 minutes help. But when it's it's accessing that part of you that is immortal. That is what enlightens the mind. So that's what I'm up to in my class. And these stories help that.
Oh my goodness, listening to you, like, oh, that's all we're up to is just, connecting with that all knowingness, higher self. Like, this is powerful work, you guys. And I know because I've practiced with Shelley, and I understand pieces of her teachings, and I'm getting a little bit deeper into being able to connect like that. It's powerful, powerful work. And you guys, of course, you're going to be able to explore everything Shelley has to offer at nowhere.ca. I've got you hooked up in the show notes down below with all of her links and all the places that you can find her. Shelley, thank you for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with us.
Thank you. I have one more thing I want to offer, and that is that when I first met you, I had been living in a very structured situation for so long, and you actually taught me how to begin to speak out loud, and you were my blessing. So thank you very much.
Oh my goodness, my pleasure. Thank you for that. So you guys, please explore those show notes below and find Shelley's website, Amazon links for her books, and all of her social platforms. Go take the next step. So maybe you know a kid who needs a Brave Kids book, right? This is going to be an amazing book to add to your collection or give as a gift. And maybe the teacher in your life would like Shelley's curriculum book. It's an incredible tool for teachers. And to chat about your Brave Kids book idea, please visit us and schedule a chat with our publishing team at bravehealer.com. Lastly, everybody, remember, you were born so you are worthy. Your message matters, and you will change the world when you're brave enough to share it. See you next time, everybody. Thank you, Shelley.